Welcome everybody, you are here now. So welcome to SDC Day 3. This is the final day of the Student Development Conference, and this is our last panel, the Digital Summer Clinic. My name is Maddie, I'm the president of the Eastern Michigan University Public Relations Student Society of America, Eleanor Wright chapter, EMU PRSSA. I want to give a quick shout out to Ann Arbor Spark for sponsoring the Student Development Conference this week. And I want to thank all the attendees for joining this past week and for joining this panel, as well as the amazing panelists who are going to speak tonight. Tonight we have Kylie Gilligan from the Center for Digital Engagement. We have Eric Wortman from Google. We have Jorel McCree from Pinterest and Kayla Henneman from Adapted. And I want to introduce Marisa, who's going to be our student moderator tonight. So Marisa, go ahead and get it started.
Yeah, all right. Hi, everyone. First of all, I just want to thank EMU PRSSA for having the Digital Summer Clinic here for your Student Development Conference. We're really excited to be here. Like Maddie said, my name is Marisa Salici. I'm a field manager at the Center for Digital Engagement and a former 2020 Digital Summer Clinic intern. I spent my time working at Genomenom as a digital marketing intern. She already did the introductions of everyone, so I'll skip that part of my little script. So I just want to kind of give a little intro into what exactly the Digital Summer Clinic is. And that's kind of like what our questions will be based around. So the Digital Summer Clinic is held every year in conjunction with Ann Arbor Spark and the Center for Digital Engagement, and it's a paid internship for students interested in finding careers in digital. Interns span a broad range of majors, including public relations, communication, business, media arts, computer science, and more. I'm a journalism and poli-sci major, so lots of majors. In addition to working with companies, a part of Ann Arbor Spark's high-tech incubator, interns also have an opportunity to connect with industry professionals, our clinic mentors, so Jorel and Eric, who offer guidance when building a professional portfolio. 48 positions are available. Applications open February 19th of 2021. And with that, let's get started with some questions. So my panelists, tell me a little bit about yourself and possibly a fun fact. We'll start with Eric.
Let's see. My name is Eric Wortman. I'm a proud graduate of Eastern Michigan University. I work at Google across some of their larger advertisers. So I've worked in like the sports and ticketing events space, as well as some other companies like Procter & Gamble brands like Gillette and Olay. Fun fact, you always put me on the spot. I have 2 dogs and we named them after kind of funny, I guess, literary devices. So one of them is #dog and the other is Oxford comma. So we call them TAG and Oxford for short. So when in doubt, just go with the pets for the fun fact.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Jorel?
Hello everyone, my name is Jorel McCree. I am also a proud grad of EMU. So I was also a student of the digital marketing program there. I currently married with a daughter who's awesome. Her name's Mackenzie. Fun fact, I would say, actually a cool fun fact, I was actually named after Superman's father. And after that happened, my dad never touched a comic book again. So that's super interesting. It's awesome because every now and then somebody knows that, and they would just, as soon as they hear my name, they just kind of sit back and I can see their mind working, and I just say yes. That's where it came from. So that's awesome. And then I am an account manager at Pinterest, and what that means is I basically help support brands who are looking to grow their presence on the platform, and I help them to be successful.
Cool. And a fun, oh yeah, you already gave the fun fact. You left it in the middle, and then I'm always expecting it at the end. And then what about you, Kayla? You next.
So my name is Kayla Henneman. I am a digital marketing specialist at Adapted. I just graduated in EMU in April, so I am a pandemic grad. And a fun fact about me is that I'm a major sitcom fanatic. I feel like I've seen almost every sitcom that is from from 2000 forward, basically.
What's your favorite sitcom?
How I Met Your Mother, hands down, even with the ending.
That is a really good one. What about you, Kylie?
So my name is Kylie Gilligan. I am a current senior at Eastern. I am a field manager for the Center for Digital Engagement and was an intern in the 2020 Summer Clinic. My fun fact is my favorite movie is Dirty Dancing.
Very cool. So Kayla and Kylie, tell us a little bit about why you applied to the clinic, and then who you ended up working for and what you were doing in the clinic.
I can start. So I applied as things were kind of starting to shut down. We had just been let go from school. So I'm a PR major, and for my major, we need an internship. So I kind of went into a bit of a panic and was not quite sure what my next should be. And I remember Jamie talking about the clinic, and I also went to this event last year where there was also a panel, and everything that was said just made it sound really interesting. I really liked the idea of being matched with a company. So I applied, and I'm so glad that I did. I was assigned a company called Project Synergy, and they offer a cloud-based platform for the automotive companies who are entering pre-production or prototype management. So with them, it was a lot of messaging. They'd never had any sort of communications or PR work done before, so it was a lot of just making sure their branding was on point. And my biggest project was some testimonials. We interviewed about 6 people who used the product, and then created testimonials for the website and some of their social medias.
Very cool. What about you, Kylie? Or Kayla? Oh my gosh, too many K's. I've been saying this before. I can't with the same letter. I can't do it. All right.
My story is very similar to Kylie's. I took Bud's class, and so I took 2 of his classes. So about 12 times a week, I heard about the summer clinic through the entire semester. Bud told me repeatedly, he's like, "Hey, you should apply. You should apply. You should apply." And I was like, "Huh, I'm gonna get a full-time job." And obviously, with the pandemic, that a lot of places went through a hiring freeze, and so I was like, well, for sure, I'm going to apply to the clinic. I remember I was at the panel, or at this last year too, and I remember hearing Andrew talk about how he made a video for his company, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be in a video. I'm going to apply for the clinic and just see what happens. And so I ended up working for Adadapted during the clinic, which is who I work for now, and I ended up working, I did social media management essentially for them. So I did all the content creation, and then ended up helping them out with social.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. So Eric and Jarrell, I know you talked a little bit about your roles at Google and Pinterest, but can you give us a little bit more insight on that, and then how you got there? So let's start with Eric.
Well, my now manager, he came and spoke at a class back when I was a student back at Eastern. So, and then about, 8 to 10 years later, give or take, is when he eventually hired me. So I always like to tell people, make sure to be nice to everyone you bump into, because they might offer you a job one day. But so I was working at iProspect in Detroit, working with Jarrell at the time. And a recruiter from Google reached out to me about a role. I interviewed for that role and did not get the role, but at least impressed them enough that they kept an eye on me. And then when my now boss had an opening on his team, he posted just like a casual link to or mentioned the open role on LinkedIn. So I reached out to him via LinkedIn and just asked if he would, like to give me some more information. He was nice and offered to meet me for a beer at Bar Louie, which is where right below where I don't think Bar Louie exists anymore now due to the pandemic, but it was right below the old Google office. I know everything's changing. So he met and gave me a good overview of the role, and luckily my experience, they were looking for someone with a lot of agency experience, so my experience lined up well. I interviewed against a few other candidates, and then was fortunate enough to get the role. So it's coming up on just about 5 years now. So I work similar to Jarrell. I'm an account manager, so we're tasked at Google with making sure all the campaigns are running properly, and really being a consultant to the advertisers. So we present them with different opportunities, do a lot of reporting, do a lot of insights, but really a lot of it is just kind of leading the business and making sure that the advertisers and the clients we work with know everything about Google products, and really just kind of the advertising industry and how to move forward. So it's a busy job, but it's a good one.
And then I guess I can go next. So as Eric mentioned, it's kind of funny. So I actually took 3 of Bud's classes previous to my time at Prospect. So I was in that same boat as Kayla, where I was looking for a full-time job when I was about to graduate, but I wasn't really sure. And I thought I wanted to give digital a try, but I wasn't even really I wasn't in the digital field at the time. So Bud, hearing more and more about the programs and being able to work with nonprofits at the time sounded really interesting. So I did that. And similar to what Eric said, is you never know who you're going to bump into, and always be nice. Eric came in and spoke to the class that I was in at the time, and I was able to ask a few questions. He gave some tips on, if you do X, Y, and Z, I guarantee you that you would get an interview with iProspect. And I literally did X, Y, and Z. Not only did I get the interview, but I got the interview. And it was right, actually, as soon as the program ended, I went right into iProspect, which, looking back on it, I think was a huge accomplishment, thinking, because I think most of the people that were there had a ton more experience. So the speakers that come in and talk to the students are really insightful. So listen to what they have to say, because it definitely helps. So I worked at iProspect for about 4 years. And then after that, I joined Pinterest. And the way that happened is at iProspect, my job was to help the brands that I worked on at GM buy paid social and paid search. So Pinterest was one of the platforms that would come in and they would introduce us to their value proposition and how it fits into the consumer journey and buying cars. At the time, I think just the dialogue that I had with the team that would actually interface with me day to day, they saw something in me at the time, and they were like, you know what, we have a role and we want you to interview for it. And I interviewed and I got it, and I've been here 2 years. And I think similar to what Eric said about what the day-to-day job is like as an account manager, it's really knowing the nuts and bolts of the platform. So Eric knows all things Google, I know all things Pinterest. And what I do now is I go and talk to OEMs like Ford or GM, and then they would tell us what their goals are, and then I map that back to what the value proposition is on Pinterest. And that comes through with running campaigns, reporting, providing unique insights that are relevant to them. And that's how I got to where I am today.
Just to add one quick thing, I think there's been a lot of Eastern grads that have come through and are working at Google, working at Pinterest, working at Facebook, working at a lot of the companies that have come through the Digital Summer Clinic. And so similar to MBA programs, where companies associate themselves with an MBA program because they kind of know the types of students that come out of that program, I think we're starting to kind of build that foundation with the Digital Summer Clinic, but just Eastern in general, whether it's the PRSSA Association. I think we're starting to get a really good network of Eastern alums. And so it's good to network with the alums, even the interns that are now just starting at companies like AdAdapted, because the companies are now becoming familiar with the types of students coming through Eastern. And so it's almost like we can help vouch for you. So then if you come in, you send in your resume, they're like, oh yeah, we love, the Eastern grads that we've previously hired or have worked with. So it helps get your foot in the door, then you present yourself well. I think that really helps you kind of take the next step after graduation.
Yeah.
I think one quick thing to build on that, that's so true, because in my time at Prospect, I probably can say that I have spoken to at least 5 Eastern grads that have come after me that now work there. So definitely a network, and they see this program or EMU and digital marketing, and is very highly sought after.
Yeah, definitely. That's really nice to know too. So before we continue on with questions, I just want to remind all our attendees that in the chat feature, you can ask some questions for our panelists, either specific to the person or just in general. And at the 45-minute mark, I'll be sifting through those questions. So if you have a question for any of the panelists during the time, just sift them through the chat. So Eric, can you talk a little bit about the mentor experience in the clinic, and what are some areas that you were able to help students with, and how has mentorship made an impact? I know you just touched on it a little bit, but if you could give us some more insight.
Yeah, it was great being a mentor for the clinic this past summer. I was very impressed by all of the students. They did a great job. Just dealing with COVID, dealing with going remote. I was just happy to be around them and to lend a hand. But I think with the mentors, what we were able to do was you're working in an internship, so you have your boss, you have your managers, but we're able to kind of help you kind of guide some things. If you get frustrated, give you some tips, give you some things to to work on. Oftentimes, the companies you're working for are a bit more in startup mode, and maybe your manager is managing a million things. Their number one job is definitely not to, mentor an intern who's about to graduate college, especially remote during a pandemic. That's not their main job description. So what the mentors we try to do is give you a few more things, maybe a few things to focus on. And oftentimes what you're doing as an intern, even though you're an intern, you might be the person that knows the most about the subject you're working on. So if that's building out a content calendar or doing press releases, oftentimes the companies you're working for, there's not someone at the company that knows more than you. Now, I'm not saying I know more than you, but you can lean on us and the other students and all the faculty through the clinic to kind of help guide and make sure that you are being the expert. Because never underestimate coming from digital or PRSSA or any organization. Once, especially when you get into a small company, there's a very good chance that you know more about that topic than anyone else you're working with. And so you might be a little inexperienced in leading and kind of figuring out how to take your expertise and have an impact on the company. And I think that's where we come in. And then, hopefully too, besides the internship, you can maybe get a job offer for the company that you're working for with. I know a lot of interns did, or plugging into the network. So now, Jarrell and I, we can connect you with a lot of people. So especially because both Jarrell and I come from the automotive industry, we know a good number of people in Southeast Michigan.
Yeah, cool. So Jarrell, obviously you've been a long-time friend of the clinic, and now you're an incoming executive in residence for the 2021 clinic. What are you most excited about for the upcoming summer?
So much. I think the biggest thing is I've always loved the program, and I think even when I've been in the program, it grew so much. And now I think it went from working with nonprofits to working with, I think, the latest and greatest in companies in Southeast Michigan. So I think it's really cool to be able to not only help students be able to succeed and grow in their careers, but also help them navigate these new startups. I never worked at a startup. I had a small experience with a startup within a startup, but it was one of the coolest experiences of my life. And I think helping students navigate those, because there were some bumps along the way. So I think I have some experience in it to help lend. And also really at the end of the day, when I can see, hey, I've been able to give back to the way that people were able to help me in my career, it makes me happy. So it's kind of my way of paying it forward. So happy to do that. And specifically, I think right now, I feel like with COVID and so much, just digital it's always been big, and we've always said it's like the year of mobile. Digital is here or coming. I've never seen it here as much as it is right now. So I think it's only going to grow, and I'm really just excited to see what comes next.
Yeah, definitely. So Kayla, like you said before, you're currently working full-time for the company that you were assigned for in the clinic at Adapted. How did the clinic prepare you for this full-time position as a digital marketing specialist?
The biggest thing that it helped me do was learn how to win over the trust of a manager. The big issue I feel like not only I had, but a lot of other people had was trying to, like Eric said, like we all kind of have that expertise and we have that knowledge, but it's hard to show the person who's been there for a long time and's been at that company, was taking care of so many things, that it's okay to trust me with that information. A big win for me and Donovan, the guy I worked with on my project, we were able to get Adapted to let us get a hold of their social media accounts, and able to log in, and then also able to take care of their HubSpot accounts and actually post in there. So it made everyone easier, and it was I even use that now to this day. I'm taking over their ad accounts now and helping them with that, and I every single day I'm able to show, I know the way I need to go to show to my manager that I know how to handle this, I know what I'm talking about, and she can trust me with taking over this task for her.
Yeah, that's a super helpful thing to have. Do you have a favorite project that you worked on, either now or during your time in the clinic?
Right now I'm working on some ad campaigns for LinkedIn for Ad Adapted, and one that's my baby project right now. We're working on a lead gen campaign, and we're actually upgrading it so you get a lead gen form on LinkedIn, which is a huge deal because one, it costs more, but also it's going to help make those leads come in so much easier. So that's my big project right now, and it's my favorite because we're actually doing a lot of audience segmentation, and it's really cool.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. So Kylie, following the clinic, you had an internship with TechStack, a company a part of the 2020 Digital Summer Clinic, and now you're back with the Center for Digital Engagement alongside me, very exciting. Tell us how the clinic prepared you for these roles.
Well, I think Kayla kind of hit the nail on the head. I definitely experienced some of that as well, especially with my first internship, as I mentioned, Project Synergy, not having that experience with communication and PR. I definitely did have to step in and assert myself, which I wasn't all that comfortable with. And now looking back, I'm so glad that I did, and I feel a lot more comfortable stepping into those professional roles and not being, the intern who's afraid to really assert myself. And also, I think it was just such a great experience being able to work virtually, and then shifting. Obviously, we're still in virtual mode. So I think if I were not to have worked remotely with the clinic this summer, I would have gone into, my internship with TechStack and just had no clue kind of how to navigate that, how to self-manage, how to make sure that I was on top of what I needed to do while sitting, in my apartment every day. And another thing is the certifications that we have to get through the clinic. I already was Google Analytics certified, so I ended up getting my Google Ads certification, but just the other day, my boss pulled up, our Google Analytics for our site as she was going over some of the blogs I'd written, and I knew exactly what she was talking about. I felt really comfortable, having that conversation with her, and that was really, really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have a favorite project that you've worked on either during your time with Project Synergy or TechStack?
Yeah, I think for TechStack, so we act as a matchmaking service between IT providers and small businesses, and we also offer content creation and branding for those IT services. So last thing I was working on was a branding package full of content, just kind of updating some messaging for one of our clients, and it was a lot of fun.
Very cool, very cool. So Kayla, as a 2020 grad, like you said, a pandemic grad, what advice do you have for students who are graduating this year or the following semester when it comes to the job search? What should they be focusing on?
Really network. Like when I came to this event, they told me networking. Erica said networking. Jarella said networking. And networking is the way to get a job. Obviously, I got my job from working at the position, so they already knew me, so they felt more comfortable hiring me. Because I wasn't hired in immediately after. It took a few months for them. They went on a hiring freeze as well, and I got hired after. But definitely like getting to know more people. I had professors reach out to me like before I graduated in April. Before the pandemic hit, but they reached out to me and told me like they had friends who had startup companies, would need marketing help. So like reaching out to your professors, any of your friends, people at the summer clinic that you may already know from like previous semesters, a lot of your classmates who have graduated before you. The more people you know, the easier it is to have those people vouch for you and kind of get your foot in the door.
Yeah. So Jarell and Eric, following up on the talk about job search, what advice do you have for students who are not looking for internships next summer, but jobs? I know that not everyone in this panel is probably interested in an internship, but what about jobs? What should they be focusing on?
Great question. For me, I think one of the things that I always tell people to do is like, think about the job that you want and start to look at the skills that you may need. Everybody knows that you're coming right out of college, so they're going to give you a little bit of grace for that. And some companies are really looking for somebody that they can train, but also find a way to get in the weeds now a little bit. So maybe you're doing a free internship while you're in school before you actually apply for that job. Maybe it's you just creating a website or something just to play with some of those tools and start to learn the lingo before you actually go in and apply for those jobs. Because I think at the end of the day, when you go to interview for that opportunity, you're going to be right next to someone else who's graduated, and you're going to be able to say, hey, I know I'm right out of college, but look at what I've been able to do during my time there. So network and find a way to get started now.
And I say when you're interviewing and you're developing your resume for that job specifically, I tell people this a lot, but don't underestimate some of like the smaller things that you did. So you don't have to have an 8-month internship to put those types of skills on your resume. if you did some certain sort of analysis or put a plan together as even part of a project for a class, or especially if it's like a capstone class, or you did something with one of the organizations you're in, you can use that and have that be a bigger line on your resume and highlight that more if it aligns with one of the attributes or preferred qualifications for those jobs. So really try to read the job description, figure out what are kind of the root skills and kind of examples of that. And again, you know, like what we said, networking really helps, having experience, even just doing something kind of on your own, whether you're blogging, or I'm not saying you have to build your own app, but just anything that you do, you know, you don't have to start your own company or anything, but anything that you do to kind of show that you have passion in a specific area, kind of just gives you another, almost a reference or an arrow in your quill, if you will, when you're applying for that job.
Yeah, definitely.
I think to build on that too, when I went to my first ever interview right out of college, I actually, I don't even know how we got in the conversation, but I told the interviewer, because he asked, he was like, you know, do you have any other interviews? And I was like, lined up, and I was like, I don't have any other interviews lined up, but I do have a media plan for how I intend to get the dream job. I was like, I already know who I need to target. I already know what ads I can buy. I had actually turned my resume into a landing page. And I was like, look, I'm going to leave here. I'm probably going to hit go on that campaign. And he was like, you know, don't hit go on the campaign. I got a call immediately the next morning. So there's so many ways that you can do it. Even if you don't actually physically do it, you can just start brainstorming around some of the things that you would like to do and talk about it. It really shows that you have passion.
Yeah, great advice. I know we've talked a lot about, you know, focusing on different ways to get yourself to that dream job. So I know, like, we brought up Google Analytics and Google Ads, getting those certifications. This can be for anyone to take a stab at this. What do you think is the most important thing to learn, or what has been the most important application that you've learned? I know for me, it's been Google Analytics because I had no clue. But what about for all of you? Anyone? Can go
So for me personally, HubSpot had a lot of courses that were super helpful. They have everything from like analytics tracking to social media to ads. It just like honestly, there's a bunch of courses there that I even like after the clinic I even took because I just thought the courses were like really fun. I felt like they did a good job of like teaching you as well and like having it be like interactive but also learning.
Nice. To build on that, YouTube is free now, so you can use YouTube to kind of like get your feet wet with some of those things that you're interested in. But back when I first graduated, I was using lynda.com. So right before the interview with iProspect, I listened to what Eric said. Eric was like, hey, you know, you can come in and say that you understand Excel and you have a passion. I went and I learned not everything on Excel because it's a lot to learn, but I learned the exact things that he mentioned were important to be able to do that job. And you know, it's pretty much self-paced learning that I think I may have spent like $20 on a trial for a month. And I was able to watch a few courses and it prepped me for the interview.
I would definitely +1 to Microsoft Excel is just have a good intermediate understanding of Excel, because whether you use HubSpot, Analytics, Google Ads, Facebook, Pinterest, so much of that either is similar to knowing how to work a spreadsheet, or you will download data and you need to manipulate data within a spreadsheet to figure out, okay, what is the insight? What is the story? what am I going to do with this data? What is it telling me to do next? So I think number one, Microsoft Excel is just a good system to have a pretty good awareness of. And then, like Kayla mentioned with HubSpot, see if you can connect with people, ask them about their day-to-day jobs, and then what tools they use, because it's probably going to be Google Analytics, Facebook Ad Manager, Google Ads, Pinterest, HubSpot, maybe a few other platforms. That's one of the great things about the internship and of us moving remote this past year was a lot of students got to experience Zoom and Slack, and even if they may have used it before, they didn't use it as much to communicate with you know, a remote manager, maybe someone that they never met face to face. And that's a big skill, just figuring out how to communicate, how to get your points across, how to have an impact if you're not meeting someone every day.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Any collaborative tool is really important. Obviously everything in Google you can use. I just started with Asana since starting at the Center for Digital Engagement, Trello. Also WordPress has been something I really had to get familiar with. That's where both TechStack and the Center for Digital Engagement host their websites. So getting familiar with that, just really familiarizing yourself with anything that the job requires is important.
Yeah, definitely. When you all brought up Excel, I totally forgot. All I did last summer was look at Excel sheets because I was doing a lot of CRM database maintenance. So Excel, you really got to get that one in there. Okay, so Jarell and Eric, what do you think is the most valuable part of the clinic? What advice do you have for students who are interested in applying for the 2021 clinic?
I want to say exposure. So when you think about networking can seem intimidating, but signing up for the clinic, you're already going to be in a built-in network. The clinic is going to bring in speakers for you to meet. So all you have to do is show up. So that's a bonus. And I think not only is it the networking piece, but just exposure to different businesses, different ideas, different types of companies that you probably would not have heard of. A lot of the companies I work with, the clinic, I never heard of. And when I'm there and I'm listening to the report outs, I'm like, that's so cool. I had no idea. So I think the exposure and the networking is huge.
The workflow of, I think we've all gone through college, and at a certain point you have a teacher where you're like, okay, I know what this teacher is looking for, I know what this professor is looking for, this is what'll help me if I focus on these few things, this is what'll help me get a good grade on this paper or this project, and I can kind of not worry about A, B, and C, but I can focus on these other things. That's really, I think, what the internship can be with working with companies, is you learn to kind of put a lot of things into practice. You know what questions to ask. You're in a familiar situation. So whether you maybe it leads you directly into a job that came from the clinic, or you go to another job, it gives you so many more talking points. And when you're in an interview or when you're sending in questions for a resume, so much of applying for a job now is filling out questions, where instead of like a phone interview or a screener, so much of it is, typing out, experience in your, or answering questions online. And so now all of a sudden you have so much more experience to lean back on. You could say, oh, when I was working for a startup and I ran into a challenge, this is how I overcame it. And so instead of just kind of theorizing and saying, this is what I think I could do, you can just lean directly on your personal experience, which is pretty invaluable.
Yeah, that's great advice. And then same question for Kayla and Kylie. What advice do you have for students who are interested in applying for the clinic or even other internships?
So the biggest thing I would say is something I noticed throughout the entire clinic, and something I was told was make sure you're giving yourself enough credit for what you do and talk yourself up. Every single time every week you present what you were doing for the week and how your results are going. And every single week, everyone in my group always got the note of like, okay, you did that one thing, but like, how did that lead to a result? What's the result? You told us what the task was, tell us what the result is. That's what people are going to care about in those interviews. And like personally, I would say like, oh, I created social media posts this week. And they're like, okay, well, what was the result? What was the point of doing that? And at the end of the clinic, I was able to say that our posts ended up creating an 181% increase in web traffic on their new website, which is way more impressive than saying like, I create social media posts 2 times a week. And so like really learning how to do that and talk about your experience in a meaningful way is something I really recommend for applying to any internship.
Yeah, I think you kind of took the words out of my mouth, just knowing how to sell yourself, and just be confident. I think a lot of us deal with imposter syndrome. I definitely do. Just apply, you never know what's going to happen. Don't sell yourself short. Just be confident.
Well, definitely great advice. I know I can speak on the imposter syndrome. One of the things that we do in the clinic is write blogs, and my first blog was on tackling imposter syndrome because I made this change. The reason I applied for the clinic was I made this change from the pre-law route to public relations and comm, and I'm obviously headed into I'm in my senior year, and I'm like, what am I going to do? So that experience in cohort meetings and talking to mentors and like listening from others was just really helpful on figuring out what my exact path was, because I entered the clinic having no clue what it was. It was just, I wanted to do this, but I don't know what to do. So all that experience in meetings, blogging, Google Analytics, Google Ads, my experience with my startup Phenomenon was just great. So those are all the questions that I have. And I know we haven't hit the 45-minute mark yet, but we have a lot of questions, a lot of great questions in the chat. So we're going to transition over to those. So if you still have questions for the attendees, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm just going to go from like the order. I'm sure we can get to them before 5 o'clock. But we'll start with Becca's question. Hey, Becca. She asked, I'm assuming this summer is also going to be virtual working for the clinic. So I would love to hear about those who worked with the clinic last summer and about how it was like to work virtually with the clinic. So what was the virtual work environment like? Kylie or Kayla, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. So obviously it was an adjustment, but as I said earlier, for the foreseeable future, we're going to be working virtually. So while it is an adjustment, it's important to be comfortable. And I'm really grateful that the internship allowed me to start getting comfortable working remotely. But I also feel like there was still such a good kind of camaraderie in my group. You have these weekly cohort meetings with a select group of people. And even though we weren't seeing each other face to face, I still, count a lot of those people as my friends. And it was still a lot of fun, even though, we weren't together physically.
I would say the same thing. I remember someone asked this question in the beginning of the clinic, and they're like, so how does everyone feel about it? And I was the first one there, and I was like, I hate it. I'm an in-person person, but working in the clinic, like Kylie said, after a while, you got to really know everyone in your group. During our virtual graduation, we were all typing each other woo, go Kylie, go Gabby, congrats, my unadapted buddy, everyone, even on LinkedIn, I still talk to those people, and I still hype up their posts on LinkedIn or on Facebook. So it ended up being a really great experience, and it's actually, you still got that personal connection even though we were all virtual.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like obviously the connections I've still made in the clinic have helped me. I'm seeing everything that everyone's posting on LinkedIn, so it's great to have that network. Eric Durrell, do you have anything to apply to that question? I know that we had professional development meetings every Thursday with experts. So how did you think that went virtually? Do you think that was, I don't know, how did you feel like those meetings went along with the cohort meetings in a virtual environment?
It was I enjoy meeting people in person, so it was painful for me to not have. I think the biggest thing that's sad for me is you don't get those casual interactions before or after the cohort, so you just don't get to know people as much on a personal level. I was able to connect with some of the students over ping or chat or email, or maybe set up another session, so that was helpful. But I think the benefit is, hey, you don't have to drive, you don't have to commute. You can line up something right before, so it saves you a lot of time. And again, it really does give you an experience of how to work remote, which is a skill that's good to have regardless of if there's a pandemic going on, but it's especially a good skill to have now. And anybody who's going to be doing the clinic in 2021 definitely has an advantage over the students in 2020, because you've obviously been doing everything for remote for probably at least a year. For the second 48 remotes, we'll have a little bit of advantage on the first one. Sorry, that's what happens when you're a trailblazer. But no, I think it's a great experience, and I think what we need to keep doing is embrace the remote nature and then make the most of it. So one of our colleagues who works for Facebook is located in San Francisco, and he was able to participate with some of these events, which typically we do in person. So I know we're trying to do that a little bit more of, okay, if we're all remote, let's reach out to everybody across the US. And you can maybe do a little bit more traveling or be at a relative's house. So make the most of it.
Yeah, definitely great advice. So Eric and Jarrell, we have a question here that says, did either of you have a mentor when you started out in your field? Anyone who inspired you or gave you good advice?
I'm gonna say everybody who came in to speak gave me good advice, and I looked at it, and I would say they may not have known it, but they were like unofficial mentors. So like Eric himself, there were other speakers who their stories inspired me. So I think that was the biggest thing, is hearing how I as a student could get to where they were, and hearing the background of like, hey, what classes did you pick? Did you know that you wanted to do this before you got there? So that was awesome. And then in terms of a mentor, I don't know if I had like a mentor, but I always had somebody that I could talk to about opportunities. So for me, I didn't even really know what opportunity I wanted to take when I graduated. So I called Bud. Actually, I talked to Bud. I hung out before class where I'm like, hey, there's option A and there's option B. What should I do? And we talked through it. So I would say maybe Bud was my first mentor, and then everybody who came to speak inspired me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Bud or Professor Gibson, whatever he wants to go by, I think was definitely my mentor, going through everything. Knew enough, and then that's how I kind of built my network. And then, and then like I said, I think now we've established a network of EMU grads at a variety of companies. There weren't nearly as many when Jarrell and I were starting to graduate. So there's kind of a built-in network of grads that basically have their hand raised, saying, hey, if you need a mentor, reach out to me. Do not underestimate when someone offers help. A lot of people don't offer help, and if someone doesn't email you back or whatever, that's just kind of how it is. But the people that do say, oh, yeah, feel free to email me, connect me on LinkedIn, shoot them out a note. You're never going to get a rude response. The worst thing that could happen is someone's busy, loses your email, or maybe doesn't respond. But always reach out to anybody you can, especially over LinkedIn. Everybody's home. Everyone's checking their email. Everybody's checking their LinkedIn all the time right now. So it's pretty easy to get a mentor from kind of the existing network that we have, or find somebody else if they just seem like their background or their current experience appeals to you. Don't be afraid to just reach out to them on LinkedIn. You'd be surprised how willing people are to connect and how gracious they are with their time.
Yeah, that's great advice. And for those who don't know, when we say Bud is the director for the Digital Summer Clinic. So I feel like we're all alluding to Bud, and they're probably like, who's Bud? So Bud is a professor here at EMU and is the director of the EMU Center for Digital Engagement, thus the director of the Digital Summer Clinic. So that's who Bud is. So we have another question here. I'm going to jump to the one for Kayla and Kylie, and then I'll come up for another one for Eric and Jarrell. So Kayla and Kylie, do you feel ready for the next few years? Is there anything you wish you would have done differently or explored further while in college? And I know, Kylie, you still have a little bit of time, but Kayla. Oh, I think you're muted.
There we go. I mean, of course, like I'm sure everyone has like something they're like, oh, I wish I would have done more of that. But definitely the biggest thing now so I never imagined going into a creative route. Like social media was not my plan at all. Bud stuck me there in the summer, and obviously he knew what he was doing. So I did fine at it enough to get hired. But I wish I would have done obviously more creative classes. I wish I would have explored that more. If anyone's at EMU and they still have another semester left, take any of Bud Gibson's classes. I took Google Analytics and Google Ads. It helped me out so much with getting like that real world experience. I guess I went to a lot of these events and networked. I wish I would have done more than I would send someone an email after a networking event and be like, hey, like I talked to you, I saw you at this panel, like I really like this, or I kind of wish I would have kept up more with that stuff when I was in college and wait until my senior year. But I mean, I think things turned out well.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, like Marisa said, I have a bit more time left, but I also wish, obviously, with COVID, it's kind of the nature of the beast, but more networking opportunities. I should have taken advantage of those while I could have. Had I known, I would have done that. I also think that Yeah, I don't really, I think doing the summer digital clinic just put me in such a position where I don't have much else that I wish I did. From that clinic alone, I got 3 internships, which is amazing and beyond what I was hoping for. So I think just networking mostly.
Yeah, I definitely agree with those pieces of advice. So the question for Eric and Jarrell, I know we talked about this a little bit before, but they're curious about how do you recommend adapting to a new work environment? What is a good balance between fitting into a particular work culture, but also bringing your own ideas and personality?
I think asking good questions, like just ask questions, honestly. I think for me, like culture is interesting because it takes a while for you to see what's going on and what the culture is. But I feel like asking questions at all helps you a few ways, right? It helps you understand kind of like what the culture is. Also, when you ask questions, people it's a unique way of telling people that you have ideas without saying, "Hey, I got this idea." Because you can ask a question that they haven't thought of yet, and then they're going to say, "I haven't thought about that before." So you're also seeding an idea through the question. So I'd say ask a lot of questions versus and being ready to listen. Really, feel free to interview people around that company just to understand what their roles are and what they do, and asking them more questions. That's typically a good way to do it versus kind of rushing in and say like, listen, I'm passionate and I have this idea. I want to change this. I want to change that. That usually doesn't go so well. I'm saying that from experience. So just kind of like ask questions, be ready to listen, and it usually works out.
It's always and this happens at my job all the time. Whenever there's a new project, it's that you need to ramp up on is how do you balance having an impact quickly, but also respecting that there's always going to be an onboarding or a ramp up process. And I think one of the most important things to think about is save a 20-hour internship or a 40-hour work week. Just focus on making the most out of however many hours you have to work that week. Typically, when you start a new position, they didn't have that many hours, that many people hours working before you started. So just the little things like, oh, I just need someone to download these reports, do something quick in Excel, and then email them out. Even though it's kind of a remedial task and it's maybe, not fulfilling, that just helps move the business. Whatever helps moving the business, just be a person, be an efficient and effective 20 hours, 40 hours, however many hours it is a week. Jarrell, took the words out of my mouth. Listen and then ask good questions. And then also, I think asking good questions, but lost my train of thought. So I'll just end there. So I'll come back to it because it escaped me.
I'm sure we'll get back to it later. So this question is for everyone, and we've talked a little bit about this topic before, but I think it's obviously it's something very important. So it requires a little bit more depth. So what advice do you have for networking and maintaining connections? I know we've all talked about regretting not, networking or maintaining those questions. What advice do you have? Anyone can take this first.
I always tell people, think of networking as I'm not trying to get something specific out of you right away. Like the example I fall back on is my now manager. I bumped into him close to 10 years before he ended up hiring me. So don't go into anything saying I'm going to get something out of anybody, just almost like you're just building a very casual friend. Make a good impression, get to know a little bit about that person. Think of it, the main thing of when you have a brief interaction with them, just build enough of a relationship for them so that when you email them or reach out to them on LinkedIn, that they'll be like, yeah, I remember this person. I enjoyed my 5, 10, 20 minutes with them, and I would like to help them. I think that's the main goal. And then the more people you have that you can reach out, the more solutions you have when you have a job or a question or something that comes up.
I know for networking right now, it's kind of hard and kind of intimidating, especially since a lot of stuff's online. My way of networking still with people is I'll reach out to them usually the first time, like through a message on LinkedIn when I'm sending a connection request. And then afterwards, I'll engage with their content. Like if they post something, I'll like it, I'll comment on it, I'll say something like that. That way, like you're popping up repeatedly, so they keep seeing you. They obviously are engaged. I mean, like who doesn't look to see who likes and comments on their stuff? So like usually they'll remember your face, and that way when you go to reach out to them later, they'll know who you are.
I think something I faced with networking was I didn't want to be imposing, or especially if it wasn't someone that I was all that familiar with and maybe had no clue who I was. I was very nervous of making that connection. But the more I did it, the more I realized a lot of people are happy to help. They're really happy to connect with you. So just don't be nervous. Go for it. Like Eric said earlier, the worst thing that can happen is you don't get a response.
Not to interrupt, but there's two types of people. Some people you'll reach out and that's just not really their personality. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means that's not really what they do. There's other people, I think Jarrell and I are typically in this boat where just about anybody who reaches out, we'll do everything that we can. And so just reach out to as many people as you can, and more often than not, you'll get someone that's very willing to help.
What about you, Jarrell? Do you have any pieces of advice?
I'm not I'm kind of the worst when it comes to networking. So I usually do it when it's convenient. So when people come in to speak, I stay later to talk to them. Or if I know someone, then I'll say like, "Hey, I think you do X. Can we talk about that?" So I think all the examples that I've heard today are great. But I will say I am really good in terms of like if anybody ever reaches out, I will always make time to either jump on a quick VC or even just go back and forth via LinkedIn, via text. So for me, trying to network with other people, I'm terrible at. But in terms of when people reach out to me for networking, I always accept.
One of the easiest ways to network is ask somebody who's already in your network who they can refer you to, because then that takes all the work out of it. So just find one person, and then you're just playing a game of telephone. You're just doing 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon all the way up to whoever you want to talk to.
Yeah, great pieces of advice. So this question's for anyone too. So what are two skills, what two skills do you think are most essential for incoming professionals in the marketing world?
I'll say being curious and being willing to learn. In the marketing world, everything is going to change. Depending on where you work, you're going to have a different challenge. So I think Kayla gave an example of that. She was working on lead gen campaigns through LinkedIn. Like, that's awesome. In my time in marketing, I've never had to do that. So typically the role dictates what you need to learn. And being curious on how can you solve whatever challenge it's going to be is going to lead you to learn new things. But if you're not ready to learn or willing to learn, it's definitely not the right field.
All marketing really is figuring out what a business goal is, and then the strengths of all the available channels or techniques or tactics you could do, and just aligning it in the best way, and then making a guess, and then reporting out or figuring out if you were right. That's it. And so the best thing to do is be familiar with as many channels as you can. Be familiar with Pinterest, be familiar with LinkedIn. The more experience you have, and then that way when an idea comes up, oh, we need to solve for this, we need more of this, you know what is the best way. And then if it's something new where you aren't familiar with, that after you do that enough, then you start knowing, okay, this is how to get up to speed. These are the questions. If I'm working for General Motors and Jarrell comes to me and says, hey, I want to talk to you about Pinterest, you know the questions to ask to learn enough about Pinterest to then go and recommend that and make that a solution.
Kylie, Kayla, do you have anything? You don't have to. We can move on to another question if you don't.
I was going to say the two things I would say, like Jarrell said, like learning is a big thing. Most of what I do at my job, I've never done before. So it's every single day is learning something new. And the other big thing would be listening. So when you're in those meetings, because I'm in a lot of meetings now, and being able to listen and understand what's going on, completely understanding what's being like told to you, what is expected of you. I feel like there's definitely not enough of that.
Yeah, I feel like the two skills I probably have to flex the most are creativity and communication. because obviously, I'm still in school, I'm learning. So it's a lot of just talking with my managers, seeing what they need from me, and then, adding a little of my own touch, I think is really important.
Yeah, definitely great advice. I think communication is, key for anything and anything in this world at this point, especially now that we're all virtual. So we're almost coming up on time here. So I just want to ask this one question because I think it's really great. So it's to Eric and Jarrell. What has been the best piece of professional advice that you have received this far in your career?
I'll go with only do your best to only make a mistake once. So you're going to make mistakes. Just do whatever you can to just make that mistake once, learn from it, and don't do it again. And I think, because then you're always learning. And then I think the other good thing is when you do make a mistake and you need to bring it up to a manager or someone, or if you have a problem, go up to them and don't just say, hey, this needs to be fixed. Say, hey, so I was doing this. I ran into a problem or I messed up. I'm thinking of solving it by doing this. Would love your feedback. And then that gives like the initiative, you're owning up, you're saying there's a problem, but you're also already bringing a solution, but you're asking for help. You're touching all the bases you need to. And if you do that, that's I think the most constructive way to bring up, hey, I screwed up, or I have a problem, or I need help. And if you just keep doing that throughout your career, I think you'll be all right.
My light blew out in here, so that's why it's so dark. But
We need another house girl.
Sitting in the dark. This is gonna sound cliche, but I think fail fast. I truly believe you can learn from everything, and I feel like I've learned the most from the failures. But the good news is when you fail fast, you know, like, hey, I tried it, didn't work. What did I learn from it? And move on. And a lot of times you never expect like some of the situations where like, man, I really wanted this to work. I think Eric mentioned, a lot of what you do in marketing is, coming up with an educated guess and testing it to see if it works. And really, if you can fail fast and say like, look, I tried this doesn't work, move on to the next thing. That's going to keep you pushing the boundaries, being innovative, understanding what works, what doesn't work, expanding your knowledge of like just what's out there. So I'd say fail fast was the best advice I was ever given.
Yeah, really interesting pieces of advice. All right, so as we wrap up, I just want to thank EMU PRSSA for having the Digital Summer Clinic here. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Eric, Jarrell, Kayla, and Kylie for being our guests on this panel. It was great seeing you all again. And again, for those interested in the Digital Summer Clinic applications open February 19th of 2021, you can check out our website at digitalsummer.clinic, as well as our YouTube account, which is new, which is really cool, Digital Summer Clinic for more information. So if you want to go see the digital lives or the mentor spotlights, intern spotlights, definitely check out our YouTube channel. And then for those attending tonight, if you are an honor student seeking to fulfill your intellectual, cultural experience, make sure to attend, if you attended 3 of the panels, email easternprssa@gmail.com and indicate that you want to receive honors credit. Thank you all again for attending the Student Development Conference this year, and have a great night. Bye, everyone.